All right, so we are jumping ahead a little bit to 10.8 day 1. I know that seems weird, but it's related to what we were doing in 9.1, so we're going to cover it now. Our objective is to graph a system of linear inequalities in two variables. For our warm-up, we'll just graph one inequality, so we remember how to do that. We have y is less than x minus 2. We need our slope and our y-intercept, m and b. Can anyone help me out with those? Deja? Good. Our slope is 1, and our b, or the y-intercept, is negative 2. So just like we were doing, we start our graph at negative 2 on the y-axis. We still use our slope the same way we were the last couple days. We could put our slope over 1. So 1 over 1 means we are going up and to the right. We've covered this a lot the last couple days in class. We have a bunch of points. If instead of going up and to the right, I wanted to reverse that, I would go where? Very good. Down and to the left. I have a positive slope, so my line should look like it's going uphill, and it does. Now, there were two other things we had to remember with inequalities. One of them was the shading, but before we do the shading, we had to remember if our line should be solid or dashed. Does anybody think they know what this line should be? Shannon? Dashed. How did you come to that decision? Very good. There is no equal to bar underneath our symbol, so that's how we know that this line should be dotted or dashed, whichever you prefer to say. The line should be dashed or dotted. So some people just leave their dots. If you dotted the whole way through, that's fine. Some people like to go back through and actually put little dashes in it. As long as you do not have a solid line, that's fine. So it should be dotted or dashed. It should still go all the way through the graph. And then we have to decide if we are going to shade above or below the line. Keon? Below. Why do you say below? Very good. If our symbol is a less than symbol, we should shade below the line. So remember, if you can't decide which is above and which is below, put your pencil or finger on the line, go straight up, that's above, go straight down, that's below. So we want this area down here. Today, since we are going to be doing two of these on the same graph, it might help to have two different colors or two different types of writing utensils. Okay, so if you have colored pencils, crayons, highlighters, markers, one pen and one pencil, something to be able to tell the difference between your two lines, that might be helpful. However, you do have to be very careful on these, because if you're doing it in pen, pencil, highlighter, colored pencil, highlighter, something that can't be erased, and you do it incorrectly, that's going to mess things up. Okay. All right, let's move on to the notes part of today. We need to find the solution of two inequalities. We're dealing with inequalities instead of equations today. So the solution is where both graphs and shading overlap. So we're looking for where the shading is going to overlap. Anybody need more time with those? All right, let's keep it going. To graph a system of linear inequalities, graph each inequality using a different colored pencil. Colored pencils are not required. It's just a suggestion. Like I said, you can use pen, highlighter, Just two different writing utensils. The overlapping shaded region is the graph of the solution set. So your solutions would be wherever your shading overlaps. All right, let's do this first example together. We've got two lines again. Now we just have more things to decide about it. So we still need to know our slope and our y-intercept. Then we're going to have to decide solid or dashed, shade up or down. Now these first two are both special lines. So our slope and our y-intercept are going to be specific on these. Usually when we have just one variable, do you remember how we graph them? So if it's just an x or just a y there, how did we decide how to graph those? We made xy tables. So why don't we graph the lines and then we'll talk about the slope and y-intercept just in case we don't remember those. So for the line y is greater than 1, if I make a little xy table for that, which column do I already know? Y is going to be 1 every time. What about x? Okay, we get to choose 3 points, so we could choose 3. What else? 5. What else? 7, sure, as long as it fits on our graph, that's fine. Doesn't matter to me. You get to choose what you want x to be. So then we graph those points. The point 3, 1, we go over 3 on the x-axis, up 1, and we put a point. For the point 5, 1, we go over 5 on x, up 1 on the y, put a point. For 7, 1, we go over 7 on the x-axis and then up 1, we put a point. So we should be able to recognize that this is going to be a horizontal line. Is this line going to be solid or dashed? Kian? Dashed. Okay, so if you want, you could just keep putting more dots, or you can dash that line through there. Before we talk about shading up or down, let's talk about what the slope and the y-intercept are. Does anybody remember what the slope of a horizontal line is? 0. So m is 0. What about the y-intercept? Where does it cross the y-axis? At 1, at that number. Questions so far about that line? All right, this is when we have to decide, are we going to shade up or down on that line? Who said up? Deja, why'd you say up? Good, we've got a greater than symbol, so we're going to shade up. Now, if you only have one writing utensil that you're using, it better be a pencil, and you should shade kind of lightly. Okay? If you're using a colored pencil or a pen or something, it's okay if you can't erase it. That's fine. But we should shade that whole upper area. All right, then for line 2. All right, so we shaded up on that one. For my next one, I'm going to switch colors. So what color should I use that's different? Let's try purple. We make an XY table for my second line. What is X going to be? 3 every time. Let me move my table over. So we've got 3 every time for x. What about for y? Natalie?
5.
Sure, we could use 5. What else? -4. We need one more. 1. All right, so we have to graph those points. 3, 5. So we go over 3 on the x-axis, up 5. This is why I recommend shading kind of lightly, because now we're going to have these points in that shaded area. All right, 3, -4. We go over 3 on the x-axis, down to -4. On the y-axis, we put a point there. And then 3, 1, 3 over on the x-axis, up 1. And put a point there. This time, we have a vertical line. And it's going to be going straight up and down. Should this line be solid or dashed, Ellie? Dashed also. It does not have an equal to bar either. So we will also dash this line. Make it go all the way through the whole grid. So this one was also dashed. Does anybody remember what the slope of a vertical line is? May? Undefined. Very good. If you were to put UND, I would accept it. It is undefined. Deja? Because it does not have an equal to bar under the inequality sign. Good question. All right, what about our y-intercept? There is not one. There's none. It does not cross the y-axis. Anytime you have an x line, a vertical line, you will not have a y-intercept, and your slope will be undefined. Finally, we have to decide to shade up or down. Remember, with vertical lines, up or down doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It's got to either be left or right. Keon, what do you think? Left? Why do you think left? Good. We've got a less than symbol. So normally that would mean down, but we know really on this one that means we're going to go left because that's where the lower numbers are. So we ignore our first line when we do this shading. Act like that purple line's the only one there and shade just for that purple line. We would shade everything to the left. Okay, if you're using just a pencil, do it kind of lightly. Our answer or our solution is just where they overlap. So what part of the graph is where they overlap? Top left part, okay? So up here. So if you're just using a pencil, one thing you could do is erase the part where it's not overlapped. Okay, if you're using just a pencil, you could also shade in where it overlaps darker. Let me see if I can. So just like shade that piece in really dark. Something to emphasize that you know that that's where it overlaps. Okay, even if you're using colored pencils, you should still go back over the overlapped part and make it darker so that I know that you know that that's your answer. All right, these lines are not special horizontal vertical lines. These ones are going to be at a slope like we're used to. Notice that y is already by itself, which makes it nice for us. Okay, that's already in slope-intercept form. So let's get to graphing. Can somebody new tell me my M and B for that top line? Ryan?
-2 and B equals 1.
Very good. Our slope is -2. So I'll write it as -2/1, and our b is a +1. Much like we've been doing the last few days, we are going to start graphing that. We put a point at 1 on the y-axis for that b. -2/1 means I'm going which directions? Down and to the right. So down to right 1, down to right 1, down to right 1. Or I could go up into the left, up and left, up to left 1, up to left 1. All right, we've got lots of points in our graph. We have to decide, is our line solid or dashed? Who can help me out with that? Lexi?
Solid.
It is a solid line because we've got the equal to bar, so we know it's going to be solid. All right, let's get a solid line in there. Whoop, not there. That's pretty close. Okay, then we still have to decide, are we going to shade up or down? I need some new hands or we're getting the sticks out. Delaney? We're going to shade up. This is a greater than or equal to symbol, so we are going to shade above the line. Again, if you're not sure, put your finger on the line and go straight up. That's above. So this whole area is considered above. If you're just using a pencil, just maybe shade lightly. Even if you're using a pen or colored pencil, just kind of shade it in lightly for now. The whole region. So we shaded up. All right, we're ready to move on to line 2. So I will switch colors. What is slope and y-intercept for line 2? Jamal? 1 and 2, very good. We could write that as 1/1 if we would like it as a fraction. And b is 2. Okay, so we go to graph it. Put a point at +2 on the y-axis. Our slope is 1/1. So we could go up 1, right 1. They're both positive. Where else could we go? Anybody? Instead of up and right, we could go down and left. Okay. We got all those points on there. My points are orange this time. Turn the light off so you can maybe see them a little bit better. We have to decide, should that line be solid or dashed? Trinity? Solid also. It still has an equal to bar underneath it. So we will get a solid orange line going through that graph. Remember, we kind of ignore our first line when we do this for now. We're just putting them both on there. I know it looks a little sloppy, but we just gotta kind of push through. There's a solid line. We have to decide, should we shade up or down from that line? Deshaun? Down. It is a less than or equal to. So we shade down. So we go anywhere on that line and go straight down. That's below or down. So again, I would maybe shade kind of lightly that whole area. And we have to decide, where do we overlap? So where do we see both shaded parts? Kian? On the right side, okay? So if you think about this being up, down, left, right, okay? It's on the right side where we see both colors. So go back over it and shade it in a little bit darker. So I know that you know that that is where our solution set is. Just as a friendly reminder, if you need to write this down, these are our less than symbols. Okay, less than or equal to. These are the greater than symbols. So if you need to add that to your notes somewhere, as a refresher from last semester, I just jot that down. Number 3, for line 1, can anybody new help me out with my M and B? Yes, sir.
M is 5 and B is 3.
Perfect. M is 5, or 5 over 1, and B is 3. We start graphing that. We put a point up at 3 on the y-axis. Our slope is 5 over 1. Normally, we would go up 5, right 1, but that won't fit on our graph. So instead of going up and right, I should go down and left. So down 5, left 1. Let's see, I think I can do that one more time on this graph. Down 5, left 1, puts me at the very edge. Not a lot of points this time. Should this line be solid or dashed? Well, we need to raise our hands. There are lots of people I haven't heard from yet today. Delaney, I have heard from you, but I pulled your stick. So what do you think? Solid or dashed? Dashed, I would agree. There is not an equal to bar on there. So we have to dash in a line. Sometimes that can be hard without a lot of points, unless you have a straight edge, which I do not. So we're going to do the best we can. All right, you should be using a straight edge, so your line should look nicer than mine. But there it is, dashed line. We have to decide, do we shade up or down? Connie, what do you think? Down, I would agree. This is a less than symbol, so we should shade down. We go to our line, we point straight down. That is where we should shade. Again, kind of lightly for now. And we've got line 1 graphed. We move on to line 2. Tariana, what are my M and B for line 2? -5 and 5. I agree with that. Oh, sorry, I should switch colors now. Let's do blue. So we've got -5 and 5 for M and B. I start my graph at +5 on the y-axis. And then where should I go? Anybody? Keon?
Down 5.
Over which way?
Right.
Good. Down 5, right 1. We can do that again, I believe. Down 5, right 1. Got a couple points in there. We have to decide solid or dashed. Logan, what do you think? It should be dashed. We do not have an equal to bar. So again, your line should hopefully look a little better than mine. But we dash in that line there. We have to decide if we are going to shade up or down. Ellie, what do you think?
Up.
Up. I agree. So we go to our blue line and we point straight up, and that is the side we should shade. Okay, where does this overlap? sure. Kian, what do you think?
On the right.
It's on the right side again. So there's this teeny tiny triangle up here where it's just blue. There's a bigger triangle down at the bottom where it's just orange. We got this big old blank space. And then we've got where we have blue and orange together. That's where they overlap. So just right along there. You might want to outline it before you shade it in really dark. This whole space over here. Notice I did not shade in this itty bitty triangle up at the top on the other side of that orange line. Okay, it gets cut off there. All right, so we are on to number 4. Looks like most people had enough time to get 4, 5, and 6 done. So we'll just pull sticks and go through them. On number 4, Danielle, what did you get for M and B? -1/2 and beautiful. We start our graph up at +4. -1/2 means we can either go down 1, right 2, or where could we go? Anybody? Down and to the right or up and to the left. So we can do that a couple times in both directions. Should this line be solid or dashed, Kelby? It should be dashed, I agree. We have a dashed line going through those points. And we have to decide if we are going to shade up or down, Ryan.
Oh, you're shading down.
We are shading down on this one. I agree with that as well. All right. We are ready for line number 2. We need M and B, Lexi. 2/3 and -1. All right, we start our graph at -1 on the y-axis. The 2 and the 3 are both positive, so we can go up to right 3, or where could we go instead? Down to left 3. Very good. All right, we have to decide if that line is going to be solid or dashed. Adrian, what do you think?
Solid.
Solid, very good. We've got that equal to bar, so it is solid. That line goes straight through there. And we've got to decide shade up or down. Jalen, what do you think?
Down.
Also shading down. It's still a less than. So we shade down from that line. We got a pretty big overlap section where we see both colors is all down here. So we should shade that in darker. Questions about 4? All right, let's see if we can get through 5 real quick. We need M and B, May. 2 and 3. 2/1 and 3. So we go to a +3. We can go up to right 1 or down to left 1. Should that line be solid or dashed, Deshaun? Solid line through those points. I know I didn't put as many points as I usually do. It's okay, we got a solid line through them. And Natalie, should we shade up or down? Up, very good. So we're shading above that line. Line number 2, Jaquan, we need M and B. -1/1 and 5. Didn't switch colors, darn it. Okay. Negative 1 over 1 and 5. So we start up at positive 5. Down 1, right 1. Down 1, right 1. For that negative slope. We need to decide solid or dashed. Shannon, what do you think? A dashed line, I would agree. We dash in that line. We got to decide shade up or down. Nevaeh, what do you think? We got a greater 2 sign, so we shade up again. This time our overlap is this teeny tiny triangle up at the top. That's the only place where those overlap. All right, if we've got time, we'll go back to number 6. Feel bad we keep on leaving out our last example.